Welcome back to the Not Important Gaming Podcast with Jeremy, Reed, and Derek. My name is Jeremy.
I'm Derek.
Hey, what's up? I'm Reed.
And
on time this week.
On time this week. Holy crap! I can't believe it.
The hype is real.
We got some stuff to talk about, and defying our name, we actually have some important stuff to talk about today.
Yeah. It's not shit we want to talk about, but
No.
you know, when stuff like this happens, we got to. But
let's at least get some of the pleasantries out of the way first. What have you guys been up to this week?
I've been in Vancouver, Canada, for the Dota 2 International, which was a big video game tournament. I'm gonna put together a piece for it. I was gonna talk about it this week, but as we'll get to it in a little bit, some more important stuff kind of came up, and so we'll do a full coverage, expose, etc. Review next week. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I got to see a lot of friends, got to see a lot of really great professionals play some amazing shit.
So Reed's weekend was obviously a lot more involved than mine was. Mine was just kind of really relaxed. Just mainly wanted to catch up on work and school stuff, mainly that, going into this next week. So yeah, I've had a bit of downtime. It's been nice, I guess, but yeah, it's more or less been pretty boring.
Sometimes
really
the best plans are no plans.
Yeah, that is true. I find that from time to time. It's just you don't want that trend to continue for too long, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep, and me this week, following up on me being sick last week, I've actually been sick all through this week, and I'm finally on what I think is the tail end of it.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, no, it's not
My
been
heart
fun.
goes out to you.
But hopefully here pretty soon I'll be back to my regular self.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I've just been doing a bit of gaming on my PS4, which is not normal for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't even turned on my PS4 in like 3 weeks. It's been some time.
Yeah. PS4
Anyway.
has so many good games.
Yeah, it really
Man,
does.
speaking of
actually.
things that make you sick, though, should we just get this in and done and out of the way?
Yeah, let's just drop the bombshell. Go ahead.
Yeah. So of course I wanted to really talk about the international this week, but I mean when we all kind of heard the news, we realized that this took precedence. Today, a little bit before noon Eastern time, there was a Madden NFL tournament that was happening in Jacksonville, Florida, in the landing center, and there was a shooting that took place there. Of course, coming from a video game tournament literally the day before myself, this really struck a chord with me. And, I knew I had to talk about it immediately, especially talk about it with you guys to kind of clarify. I mean, talk about how it makes me feel and how we as a gaming community want to deal with this. But I mean, there's a lot of different things that are involved with this, but before we get too much into it, we all talked about this ahead of time, and along with the likes of Philip DeFranco and a lot of other really great news sources, we're not going to mention this asshole's name, and we're not going to show any footage of we're not going to show his picture or anything, because we definitely don't want to give people who do things like this what they want.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people that do this kind of thing, that commit shootings like this, that what they're after is attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not endorsing that.
No, we're not. Yeah. So you're not going to see anytime anything like this happens. You're not going to see shooter's face here. You're not going to see their name. We'll give you the facts. We'll give you the details of what happened, and we'll kind of go off from there.
And hopefully, kind of expanding on that, hopefully that cycle can break once the major media outlets stop doing that as well. That's kind of the point.
It frustrates me when they do that. But
if that,
yeah. Another thing to note also is we're not going to get too crazy political, about this situation. We're a gaming podcast, not a politics podcast. I'm sure a lot of people who are better informed about a lot of the different factors at play can fulfill that need for you. But we're mostly going to focus on how we as a gaming community want to, deal with this situation. So that's another thing that we will also not really be touching on. But yeah.
All right. You want to go ahead and give them the details?
Yeah, I mean, we'll just start off by giving, just the basic details. Like I mentioned, this happened in Jacksonville, Florida. There was a Madden contest that was going on. This is, I believe, maybe like a qualifier or sort of like a lower tier tournament that is supposed to kind of like open the door for people to kind of go to the World Championships for Madden. There were some bigger names there. Let me see if we can pull it up. And of course, not all the information has been released, but witness reports do say that the alleged shooter had just lost a match and then proceeded to open fire on the crowd there before taking his own life. So it has been confirmed that the shooter himself, the shooter is not at large. There are no other suspected shooters at this point. There are 3 fatalities. There were initially 4 that were reported, but it is on, thankfully it's been dropped down to 3. There are 11 injuries, of which 7 are gunshot related due to the shooting, which, I'm really sad for the 3 people that died, but I'm really thankful that it was not worse than this. We've seen a lot of horrific shootings. And,
yes, absolutely.
Well, and the way that I heard it too was on those 3 casualties, 2 of them were actually from people who got shot, but the third was the guy who took his life was the shooter himself.
Yeah. So I mean,
so I'm not sad that guy is gone. But
yeah. It's horrible that we lost those 2 lives, but I am glad that it was not worse than it currently was.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna find some tweets from a professional Madden player. Oh, where'd he go? That were actually pretty haunting. Where is it? Drini Gajoka. I'm sorry if I'm messing your name up. And he reported on Twitter that the tourney just got shot up, and he says, this is one of the people who is injured, and he is a professional Madden player. He says, I am literally so lucky the bullet hit my thumb. And then he also he just said, I'm done. It says he's gonna walk away and then he's done. He's never gonna take anything for granted again. I mean, this is there are there's still footage out there. Thankfully, nothing that's too horribly graphic, at least none that's been released publicly yet, that shows games being played and then just immediately breaking off, and it's pretty haunting. I mean, I guess we should say, trigger warning for anybody who should, be susceptible to that sort of stuff, but it's pretty rough, especially coming from a tournament just like not too long ago, where I was even wondering, it's like, man, all the security that I had to go through and deal with, it's crazy that, I thought, you think about this whenever you go to a major event, that any event could always be the target for some really bad people, and then to immediately see it happen and know that not even gaming events are excluded from that is, definitely brings it home.
Absolutely. Well, and the shooting, it actually took place at apparently a popular mall in Jacksonville, where the tournament for Madden was going on. And I've heard accounts say that this area, there's a lot of bad parts of Jacksonville, but this area specifically noted as one of the better parts of the city. And so I think a lot of people felt more or less safe. They felt, especially being at just a video game tournament, you probably felt like you were just hanging out with friends and having a beer, but you were in a better part of town. people did not expect this. It's just kind of like the lightning bolt that happens in, clear, weather, midday. It's like when you don't expect it, it's just like it hit. And I think that's kind of what drives it home when, this professional Madden player tweeted out that he's not taking life for granted at this point, because like really any moment can be your last, and you never know what's going to happen. It's not like there were any real warnings to this. It was just a guy who could not handle, they say that they still didn't really understand the motive, but I also heard too that the guy was in the tournament, he had lost a match, and you got to imagine that maybe he couldn't cope with the loss to that tournament. I don't know, but for whatever reason it was just like, the situation is still it's very sad, for all involved. And the good news is that the others who were injured are all said to be in stable condition now. So that's definitely good. A few of them were admitted to the hospital, but they're all in stable condition. So that's good.
Yeah. The alleged shooter actually wasn't even from the Florida area. He actually apparently had traveled from Texas. Yeah. And so I don't think this is an instance of just generalized gun violence, but probably more tied to the unstable condition of the individual is what I would surmise. I'm not, like I say, the full details have not been released yet, and the motive has not been released yet, but I would surmise that is heavily tied into this
based on
situation.
The circumstances that are surrounding it right now.
Yeah, I have to imagine that because the guy actually had participated in the tournament, that this wasn't necessarily his go-to motive. I could imagine, and not that I want to really infer much off of the few details that we have, but typically in situations like this, you usually see it's a completely outside source. It's somebody completely independent of an event, bringing that situation, to the venue, rather than somebody who is actually part of the venue, choosing kind of in a very choosing, in just one moment to not be part of the event itself, and to actually unleash that kind of a catastrophe.
Yeah. No, I do want to correct myself. The alleged shooter is actually from Baltimore, not Texas.
Baltimore. Okay.
Yeah. I'll just correct that.
No, yeah. It's just it's sad either way you dice it, and right, as we don't have all the details, I know that the NFL had released a statement saying that they were deeply saddened by the catastrophic events that took place, and that they were going to be working really close with EA Sports to make sure that the criminal investigation is pursued all the way through, that they have all the details, working with the PD in Jacksonville closely. I know that the FBI has already went to this guy's home, his home, but also to his father's house. They're trying to get all the details that they out of this guy, and maybe put together some understanding as to the full motive behind it. If it wasn't just that he lost in the middle of the could not deal with the loss of that.
Right.
So
I will. I mean, in horrible moments like this, I always try to find the bright spots. Obviously there's a lot of great emotions and condolences running from from the NFL, from we shit on EA, but even they've offered their condolences,
right.
And even NFL players have reached out. I do also want to give credit where credit's due. The Florida police department and sheriff's department, they worked very quickly and very swiftly to secure the area, to find people who were hiding and locked away, to safely escort them, and also to get the people who were injured to the hospitals as fast as possible, so there are not any more fatalities. And they did a fantastic job.
Absolutely.
And I definitely want to give the respect to them. Because without them, this situation may have been a lot worse.
So, so moving forward, I mean, after this incident, what is this going to mean in general for the gaming community? What do you think?
I mean, there's one thing I do want to bring up, just because it is tied to video games and tied to shooting, because this is something that, even though it's been put to bed multiple times, always seems to rear its head.
Keeps cropping up.
I am grateful that it was a Madden tournament, because if this is a first-person shooter tournament, I can only imagine the discourse that might be going on now. And I don't want to get like necessarily political as far as like the dialogues or whatnot, but this is something that I think definitely should be discussed, because every time there's a major shooting, a lot of people like to point fingers at video games or shooters.
People would immediately try to start drawing that correlation there, and so it's fortunate that that conversation can't happen out of this.
Exactly.
Jack Thompson types, get all up in
my goodness,
the fuss. I do expect this actually moving forward. Even it being a Madden game, I actually do expect us to start hearing about how video games drive people to violence again, which is, I mean, it's terrible. It's, I mean, patently untrue.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think any responsible parent should never let kids play games that are not appropriate for their kids.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say this because it's been proved on multiple occasions through numerous studies, is that that there there is no correlation between playing violent video games and real life acts of violence. This is a thing that always seems to come up, and people always might point to like older studies that have been largely debunked by the scientific community, or that people have pointed to with flaws in their methodology. But as of right now, there are no well-regarded studies that point to this correlation. I mean, this topic of discussion has even gone to the Supreme Court. Even the Supreme Court has ruled on the side of video games as free speech and not being like a negative harm to people or even to children. So I just wanted to bring that up and nail that down before that even comes into the topic of discussion, because it always seems to pop up, and it is very frustrating, because I feel like the discussion should be on other points and trying to find solutions with this, and then we should be working together instead of against each other, and that pointing fingers at like the video game industry really just doesn't address the issue at hand. And obviously we're not the people to fix that, but I think we can at least dissuade them and try to, I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. What do you guys think?
No, you're right. I mean, it takes several voices to make sure that this is heard, honestly. And I mean, you're right. I mean, as you're 100% right in saying that. I mean, there's been no studies to prove that violence is tied, or real life violence is tied to video games in any way.
And just a small side note, even some studies, not all the studies, but even some studies have even gone the other way to say that video games do have a beneficial effect, both at reducing aggression or even in developing life skills.
Yes.
But that's maybe a side discussion for another time. But yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, I mean, I'm hoping this can be, a unifying force in the gaming community, that we can get some good out of this really horrible event.
I always. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you saying?
I feel that maybe this is why this really hits home for me. Not just because video games, I think, are in a lot of ways a refuge from life, and and it's not just the video games themselves, but also the people that we play them with, and those connections are very special, and can really forge lifelong friendships. And so I think I like to think that we as a gaming community oftentimes come together. We put aside our differences, whether they be like, race, religion, creed, sexuality, political beliefs, we like to put those aside and focus on gaming, because that's the thing that can kind of unify us as a generation, as a group. Our hobbies are shared into, like, whether it be like Madden or even Call of Duty or whatever the video game of choice is. It's something that brings people together and allows us to connect and support each other and make friendships. And so something that's very special with that is when we can meet people that we've never met in real life, in real life, at tournaments. I met so many people just this past week that I played hundreds and hundreds of hours of video games with that I'd never met in real life, and we were able to make this really safe, great bond. And so when someone comes in and they jeopardize that, it really causes it really causes a hurt. And I think I really hope that we as a community can kind of come together and support each other, because this is these events, no matter what the game is, are very special, and we had that sort of whole sacredness of kind of brokenness of something like this kind of hasn't happened before. I mean, you can maybe point to like the shootings that happened at like the premiere of the Dark Knight movie a while back, but us nerds like to look past. I don't know. So I'm sorry, I'm ranting at this point, but
no, you bring up a good point though, because now as I kind of think about it, just on that last point that you made, it's almost like even one instance of this can kind of take the innocence away from the whole endeavor. Just going to a video game tournament,
absolutely,
and what that was to everybody, may start to kind of shift in their minds. There may be kind of like a subtle hesitation, almost, if you will, kind of, of doing that again, just because in the back of your mind, I feel, and not to put too much spotlight on this, but just to draw some similarities of how, like, the amount of school shootings that have picked up pace, in recent years. It's like now we can't even talk about schools, even elementary schools, without having that in the forefront of our minds, just the idea that that's a possibility. And, I think it only takes once, it only takes one major instance of that, but where people are going to now start to associate the could be's, or the what ifs of just even going to an event that's supposed to be completely just innocently about fun and community. The entire dialogue can change. It's really sad that it's really sad that something so ugly and so evil can take the safety, the comfort, the community out of events like this. If done on a high enough scale, or done one too many times, people just don't feel safe or comfortable doing this anymore.
Yeah,
no, you're right.
It's an innocence that you can never get back.
A place where they got together and they had a good time playing games together. The fact that somebody had to go and make it about them and make it, just in general, a place that they're not able, that people aren't going to be able to feel safe anymore. It's just really tragic, and it hurts the gaming community in general because of it. That's just a really tragic thing.
Well,
I do think that if we find enough people who are willing, who are talking about this right now as we are, who are willing to take the responsible route, not name names, and not give the kind of credibility that people who might otherwise be listening, who would end up or who are thinking about doing things like this themselves, if they can understand that they're not going to get the attention that they seek anymore for doing stuff like this, then that cycle ends and they're not incentivized to be the next person to do it. And I think that can start with us as a community if we want to look at, what measures can we take as gamers to keep this out of our space, or to try to solve the problem as a whole, but especially to keep it without, out of our space, to keep it from happening. I think that the biggest solution I can think of, the only real solution I can think of, is for us to be responsible about the way that we talk about it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
As horrible as this person is, or his actions was, before today, he used to just be a gamer, and whatever it was that kind of led him to this point, I would like to believe that maybe there was somehow that could have been prevented. And I mean, because the only thing, say, kind of moving forward is like, because always the question after this is like, what can you do? How can you move forward? How can you stop this from happening again? And I'm not saying like our audience are people like that, but maybe to try to look at things on a positive note, or like a positive look kind of going out here is like, if someone is struggling, or even if you don't know if someone's struggling, being, opening yourself up, paying attention to your friends, and being there to support them if they need you, or even, if you see someone who's struggling, encouraging them to get help that they need, that is because it can sometimes be awkward to talk about like stuff like this, especially if it's like an online friend. Although sometimes maybe it's easier because it's like you're not like a real life friend. Maybe you can just kind of like talk about, or either way, if you can talk to someone, open yourself up, or be there for them if they want to open themselves up, and try to be there to support them and help them. You might be able to get somebody the help that they need, so that they never make the horrible mistake that was made today. And even not just that, but even just like, if someone is dealing with heavy depression or something like that, because mental health is always something that I think a lot of people struggle with. And even today we have, we're getting better about it, but we have trouble talking with. If we could support each other, that's some positive that we can try to make out of this. Yeah.
No, I agree. And I just don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, it's pretty shitty. It really makes you hurt inside. I don't know.
It's yeah. No, I was just gonna say, just to kind of, I guess my final words on this will essentially just be, reiterating what I said before. But I feel like we need to be responsible about how we're handling this from here on out, because I firmly believe that the only reason why this continues to happen, maybe not entirely, but definitely for the most part, is because of the exposure, because of the attention, and the people who, you got to imagine, the people who are going to be the next ones to do something like this, no matter whether it's in our space or whether it's in a school or whatever, they're alive and they're listening to these news stations right now. They're hearing the reports of this. They know what's going on. They're not sitting under a rock. They're people that are more or less just like you and I, but they may have a chemical imbalance in the brain. Who knows what it is that's the root cause as to why they could bring themselves to do something like that versus that we wouldn't. But the fact is, they're listening, they're paying attention. So be responsible with the information that person is taking in, and we can maybe begin to kind of stop the problem now.
Yeah.
And I think that starts with not naming names, not giving, these shooters the exposure that they would otherwise want. The only way that these people are going to consider themselves martyrs for anything is if they're going to get the exposure to go with it. Yeah. I feel like if we stop that here, then we would have done our service to this.
Yeah. And to not pass the buck. You can't blame video games for what is obviously, a multifaceted problem.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I agree. And that's pretty much all I have to say about the matter, I believe. Again, I guess the last thing is just my condolences, thoughts, prayers, everything. You know, my heart goes out to everybody who was involved with this. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just really unfortunate that happened.
Yeah.
I think,
But you know what? I truly believe that anybody who's struggling with this, I believe that everybody will get the support that they need, because when shit comes down to it, I think gamers are great at supporting each other when they really need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now that we've got that done out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to send us into our next topic, Jeremy?
I think so. Well, we got 2 other ones. I didn't list them all at the beginning. The 2 that we had was Runner going for player count, as well as the new Destiny DLC.
Yeah.
So, your guys' pick. What do we want to talk about?
Let's do For Honor, because that was something that kind of caught me by surprise. I mean, not like by surprise, but like it makes me happy.
It was definitely a cool initiative on Ubisoft part.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, For Honor was definitely. So I ended up actually fairly recently. I got it about a month, maybe.
Did you pay?
I did pay actually, and I don't regret paying. I got the starter edition, which the free.
Okay.
As of now, but it's I've been having quite a bit of fun with it. Actually, just had the that was earlier gameplay, but in Ubisoft's attempt to, or based on their attempt, but they have been making, they've actually seen a pretty dramatic run in player count. Went from something like, I think it was 5,000 players to actually being one of the top 10.
Yeah, that's insane.
Let me actually.
That was a game. That's a game that I really thought was just dead. It's like it seemed cool in the previews before. Like, I mean, just look at the. It's got really a long life to it, as far as like from beginning to end. Or not maybe like a long life, but it's had like such a story to its like genesis, the beginning, how much it changed in pre-development, its release, its apparent death, and now its resurrection. It's I mean, it's kind of impressive.
Oh, it actually looks like it. Oh wait, nope, there it is. It's now sitting at sitting at number 8. So the player count has actually dropped since I had picked this topic. But yeah, no, it had this.
It's now
it's now has the peak today was 85,000. The current players right now are 36.
Sounds like a healthy player base to me.
Yes, no, it definitely jumped up in player count. And I kind of wanted to, talk about, the game itself, and some of the complaints I've seen, because the reviews actually have gone. I wanted to address exceptions. A lot of free-to-play, new free-to-play people who aren't particularly the detail.
Before we get too much into it, do you just want to give a cursory overview of what For Honor is? And
sure.
Yeah.
So For Honor is, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I would describe it as somewhere between a fighting game, first-person shooter, not a third-person shooter. Not in the sense that it is a shooter itself, but in the sense that it follows a lot of like game mode.
As far as like working in a team
Yes.
to accomplish an objective.
So I guess a team-based fighting game would be the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's very unique. It's definitely got its own flavor. And it's got a very interesting skill. I'm at I believe.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that definitely to
61
point out
hours.
is that it's not just like a run up and you just smash buttons to like hit something until it dies or to kill NPCs. It's like there's a definite flow to the combat, and every character feels way different. And so in that way, you're like a fighting game. You learn these different combos and like different styles and dodges to really understand the different matchups. And there's a lot of depth and complexity to it. I was really surprised.
Yeah.
The game is a very
The kind of like 3-on-1 and like 4-on-1, 4v1 clips and stuff that I've seen come out of that game is just insane. It's like,
Oh my god!
it just I mean, it kind of has to do with skill ceiling. I mean, you can't replicate half the stuff that you can see some of these players do who are kind of at the top of their game with this. It's just I mean, there's clearly a level of depth to the entire game, to the system, to the fighting system that shows you that it's more than just a button masher type of
oh, absolutely.
type of deals.
With my 60 hours, I would not describe myself at all. But yes, so I mean, one of the main things, like I said, I wanted to kind of play. A lot of people are the amount of the amount of silver or steel, the in-game currency, have to that you for character packages, and it's basically so there's there actually is a jump from the play edition to the standard edition in terms of price for. So normally when you
doubled, right?
it's more than doubled. So the free-to-play edition, to unlock a new character, it costs 8,000 steel, which is approximately, according to their Steam page, and from my experience this has been fairly accurate, it's about 8 to 15 hours of gameplay to get that much steel. Now typically you can...
How would you compare that to like Rainbow Six?
Rainbow Six, it's actually
for like unlocking characters.
I wouldn't say that's too far off, honestly.
Yeah.
Rainbow Six, man, I've got a lot more. The thing is, Rainbow Six fairly recently, they made all of their baseline operate free with the game. Basically, when you get the game, you get all the base operators. Free are the DLC.
Isn't there like a version of Rainbow Six you can get where you don't get all the operatives, but you can earn
No, that was
currency to unlock them?
That was well. You still do that. All of the operators, including the DLC operators, can be bought with in-game currency at a fairly reasonable.
You don't have
pace.
to pay money for it. Yeah.
Correct.
And it takes about the same amount of time.
I would say
maybe?
it's comparable. I haven't timed it, but I've never at any point in time playing Rainbow Six. This is taking too.
But it's not like ridiculous as compared to like Rainbow Six.
Right. I'd agree.
Which is a paid game, mind you.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to get that out there because I think like when people start saying like, you could look at Battlefield 2 and like you had to put in like ridiculous amounts of time to unlock what was considered to be very basic parts of the game, as compared, which I mean, yeah. So I just want to kind of put it into like a frame of perspective.
Yeah.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this free-to-play aspect of For Honor that we're talking about, that's part of the standard edition. This was a offer that Ubisoft put on the table for 5 days. I want to say it started, on Friday, and it ends, or no, it would have been either Wednesday or Thursday, but I think it ends tomorrow, the 27th.
I believe it ends today. Oh, actually, yes, tomorrow, because in Central Time now, that is today. But yes, so the offer does end very soon for the free.
Oh, so it's not like a permanent free-to-play?
No, it's a temporary thing.
No, but that does beg the question. Did they ever talk about deciding to make it fully free to play at any point in the future?
I think this is kind of their testing. If it's going out, which, I mean, they've seen a pretty dramatic increase. I can't imagine the character packs they're exactly struggling to earn money with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, just the way that it seems they have the in-game currency, purchasing, the new characters, and the way that they have that scaled is enough to, like, so if they can just get people into the game and like working towards that, they'll have already made their money back for sure.
Yes. Now, the other thing that I wanted to say about the currency pack, or the earning characters, is while with the starter edition, yes, it costs you $8,000 to unlock a baseline character. Actually, if you upgrade to the standard edition, that price goes down to 5,000, or excuse me, not 5,000, 500 steel very quickly. So, yes, I can understand why some people would say that is pay to win. No, I don't necessarily agree.
I think it's nonetheless, it's a good deal for players who have had kind of reservation in the past about trying the game out and who are now just going to be kind of hopping on the train.
See, and that's kind of the position that I was in when I got, actually, talking about this reminds me of an upgrade by the starter edition. But the other thing that I was talking about, I was hearing a lot of people say the game was free to play, particularly complaining about characters. Centurion and Lawbringer are notorious noob stomp. And Centurion especially is a D character, so his price tag goes up dramatically across the board, regardless of what version you own. He actually costs 15,000.
Is he OP?
He's not OP, but he has a combo which is very difficult to understand for a new player. That can kill you very quickly. Has a very, very easy and to kill you quick. Now, if you understand how to counter that, which new players are not going to know how to do, it becomes very easy to defeat kind of a one-trick pony. But I think a lot of new players are seeing that they're getting creamed by this one-trick pony noob stomping character. Then they're going to look at him and see, like, oh, I want to buy him. He just kicks ass, and seeing that hefty price tag on him.
So the lesson is, don't be a noob.
The lesson is, don't be a noob. And I'm only, like I said, at 60 hours, I am just now reaching where I can reliably beat him, an average player.
Have you unlocked them yourself?
I have not. I'm actually, my roster is fairly bare.
What are you spending your steel on?
I am
cosmetics?
Cosmetics, executions, stuff like that. Honestly, I put quite a bit of money into. So can you? Is there a puppy cosmet, like a little dog you can get? Man, I wish.
Yes.
That's the other complaint that I actually agree quite a bit with that I've seen, is a lot of the cosmetics kind of lame and kind of useless. Because a lot of the cosmetics in the game right now are spikes and more spikes and not a whole lot else.
I hope that now that the player base is slowly growing, that they'll continue to support it and put out cosmetic packs, because that's a great way to make money off of a pre-existing game.
I agree.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And that actually...
And it doesn't, it's not pay to win,
Yes.
Everybody loves skins. Skins are awesome.
Now, I mean, the kind of the bigger conversation I wanted to kind of springboard into the fact that this is, I think, one more game. Off just kind of they've been working hard on run up the other Rainbow Six. Which
No Man's Sky. Oh.
I don't think Ubisoft was responsible for No Man's Sky.
I thought you meant outside.
They are. We just don't know why yet.
Continue.
Which Rainbow Six has gone from being, regarded as a pretty terrible shooter, to being another one of the. It's actually also on the top 10. This is number 5 top played on Steam. So. It's also seen a pretty significant run. And that's kind of the bigger conversation, like I said, I wanted to talk about was Ubisoft having this big turnaround where they've put a ton of effort in fixing up the pretty widely regarded as bad game. Which they absolutely didn't have to do, but I think it has. I guess it's the fact that they have developers that are actually really passionate about it, which is really nice to see in a AAA.
It's a really, I think, fascinating topic from like a financial perspective, because it's like, if you kind of like take a step back from it, it's like, these games were not great on launch. Possibly you could even say like underdeveloped, and they eventually got the support, which took further investment. So it's like, is the solution? So I love it when a company wants to make a game good, whether that's after its release or at release. A good game is way better than a bad game. Everyone can appreciate that.
Absolutely.
The other thing is like, well, it does create frustration when it's like not good on release, but is it becoming? This is something that I'd be interested to know. Is it becoming too difficult to guarantee a good game on release? And so they kind of have to put out a game with like, let's say you have like a budget. Do they put out a game using like 80% of that budget, get feedback from the players, and then use that 10% of the budget to finish off the game and make it finally good? Or the 20% math is hard. Because is this a trend that will persist, or is it just like, Ubisoft is just kind of, taking cleaning up the skeleton, dressing up the skeletons in their closet?
I don't think this will persist. I certainly don't think it's one that should. Ubisoft, I think, is a special case. They've basically all of their main have received a huge overhaul. But I don't necessarily think that it's unrealistic. Put in the time and effort. CD Projekt Red. Living proof that gamers will wait.
Yep.
That is true.
The amount of hype that is surrounding why am I playing Cyberpunk right now is absolutely insane. I have yet to see this. I'm tired of waiting for this. I don't care how good the game is. Everyone seems to be waiting for the game.
Can we get CD Projekt Red to make Half-Life 3, actually?
I'd be fine with it. Yeah. No, I'd be totally fine with that.
I agree. I think one thing that a lot of people like to forget is how difficult it is to fully develop a game, because a lot of times it's like what you might, even if you try your damnedest, sometimes when you release a game, it's not what you thought it would be, or it's just not what the audience wants, or there's just something about it that just the audience latches onto and they completely missed what you were aiming for in your game, and so a game falls flat. And
I think especially with like original concepts, like with the first in its in what would be like its line of like sequels is, how do you create an original concept that you can say, without a doubt is going to give you a full return plus more enough to make a sequel. It's like, maybe and that's what, because I feel like once you get, maybe 2 or 3 into any given series, you have enough player feedback across the community that says, this is what I like about it and this is what I don't like about it, and you can like kind of enhance on the good stuff and kind of get away from the bad stuff. But it's like, creating a new anything and expecting it to hit well is always kind of a toss-up, and that's why it's it kind of is what it is. I think just, no matter what form of art you look at, it's like it could either hit. It's like a new song. You either like it or you don't.
Dude, it's scary, man. Because I'm not a game developer, but imagine putting like literally tens of thousands of hours like trying to make a game, and then like this is your baby. You work so hard on it. You love this thing. And you finally put it out there, and then just like terrified, waiting to see if like everyone's just gonna shit all over it.
No Man's Sky strikes again.
Well, it's just like, that would be, as a game, like, that would just like make me feel awful.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, honestly, and the death of games is annualization. Which is why, it was such huge news when everyone found out, like Assassin's Creed, for example, was going to be a, it wasn't going to be an annual franchise anymore. They've now announced that they're
Take a year off.
Yep. They've now announced that they're not going to be releasing an Assassin's Creed in 2019, and I think it's because they saw how well, Assassin's Creed Origins did, and since it was a huge jump in quality, and people did enjoy it so much.
I think you also just, if you do something too much, you saturate your market, and then just like, you just end up sort of like cannibalizing. I mean, in a weird way, you end up cannibalizing your future profits by doing too much now. I think another thing is also just like, constant reboots or rehashes or sequels of pre-existing franchises. So, releasing new IPs is just always, I mentioned a little bit when you're talking, but somehow Sony keeps on fucking releasing new concept like Horizon Zero Dawn. They keep releasing all these great sort of individual story games, which aren't sequels or rehashes or expanded universes of any other games. They're just great standalone titles, and I really do appreciate that. It's not to say that you can't make sequels. I mean, the newest God of War was amazing, but we see it too much in Hollywood. I love it when the game industry takes a chance on something new. And maybe we should be a little bit more forgiving about that when they do that. So.
No, I agree. That's the thing is a lot of people they just want to buy the new Call of Duty. They just want to buy the new Battlefield. They're not interested in the new IP, which is unfortunate. And what it does, it encourages these low effort, annualized titles like Call of Duty. Which is, I think it's like I said, I think it just in general it's detrimental to as a whole, because
likewise it discourages those that new IP from ever seeing the light of day.
Yes.
Yep.
And I just but getting back on track, I guess, with For Honor. I just thought it was very interesting to see this title that Ubisoft once again they'd taken a title that had assumed to be dead, that nobody was playing, and completely turned it around and made it. Basically, they didn't have to do it. They didn't have to fix the game. They could have abandoned it honestly, it probably would have been the safer bet to abandon it and make a new IP, or not necessarily a new IP, but a new game that didn't have this label of bad game attached to it.
Yeah.
As to,
kudos to them, man.
Yeah,
good move though.
Absolutely. As to whether or not this stays around, that's another question. I mean, we saw what happened with Evolve. When Evolve went free to play, it saw a huge spike in players, and then they gradually died off. But
oh god, that was a game that didn't get supported after the fact.
No, yeah, and that was part of the issue. Ubisoft is pretty consistent given this game support, even when it wasn't doing well. They were releasing regular updates about once a season. They would release like a major overhaul for a character, and they're still in the process of that.
Well, and I think on that note about, like updates and just player retention in general, I think the timing of this couldn't have been any better, because here actually pretty soon in mid-October, they're going to be rolling out their new Marching Fire update, which is going to include a new faction, new heroes, and a new mode to it. So like they may have timed this so that it lines up with just around the point where players who, may not have wanted to continue getting involved are going to be seeing new content, and that's going to kind of keep them in, and they, who knows, like may just go from there.
Yes, I'm very excited to see what Siege Mode has in line, and the Chinese characters that are coming out here. It's going to be very interesting.
Love it.
Yeah, no, glad to see the game doing well, especially because I've been having a lot of fun with it, and I'm glad more having fun, despite the poor reviews. And
I'm not looking at the stream right now, but I can only assume that you're showing your previous footage. But you were like owning in For Honor. It was fun to watch.
Oh yeah, no, that
Dude,
was
that game.
That was
it's like equally as fun to watch it as is to play. I'll say that much.
Oh, absolutely. No, right now I'm showing some GoldenEye Source. Yes, it is older gameplay.
It's basically the same thing.
Pretty much the exact same game. You're right.
Yeah.
GG. Oh boy.
All right. You want to move on to our last topic of the night then?
Heck yeah.
All right, Derek, go ahead and take it away.
Some might even say it's our destiny to move on to the next topic.
Please don't.
Oh god. No, so the last
You can tell by my cadence.
I hate you.
Holy.
Sorry, continue.
No, so Destiny 2, they're actually Bungie is releasing a new expansion for Destiny 2. It's called Forsaken. I think this is the first major expansion since the game launched. I could be wrong about it. I think there was an update a while back, but it was like a smaller relative update. This is their actually calling it expansion.
I think what it was, the other one was supposed to be a full expansion, but it really was just super short on content. So
yeah, that's how it hit me.
So it kind of feels like, I think it was intended to be something equivocal to Forsaken, but
right.
But I'll let you finish. Yeah.
No, but that's essentially how it hit me, which is the reason why I guess I didn't really see it as an expansion if it was considered one. So I guess for all intents and purposes, this is the first full expansion for the game. It's kind of weird saying that, because when I hear the word expansion, of course I think it MMOs, and Destiny 2 is technically an MMO, but I forget that because it's such a light MMO anyways. Well, it's releasing September 4th, which is not coming Saturday, but I think it's next Saturday. Or no, next Tuesday. Well, and I was looking up a lot of details for it. One thing I definitely wanted to do is I wasn't somebody who played Destiny 1. I knew a few people who were really big into the first Destiny, and I kind of jumped onto the train with Destiny 2 when it initially came out. And one thing I heard like across the board from the community of like Destiny 1 players who had transitioned into Destiny 2 was that the game felt just kind of like an empty shell of what Destiny 1 was. And I guess to some extent you're going to have that with MMOs, because the entire concept is that it builds itself over time, but you have to give it time to build. You know, so like when you're faced with the initial kind of, you know, the content that's more or less just given to you like from the get-go, that's just you know, more or less, you know, there from, you know, the beginning, you know, pre-end game, it's going to not be you know, exactly what you had towards the very end of the last last game, which might be like, you know, 5.0. That's after a constant series of updates, tweaks and fixes, hot fixes to the entire game. So a lot of people, you know, with the launch of Destiny 2, were just not really all that excited about for the future of this game. But I think that we're starting to see the discussion kind of shift back towards, you know, those original Destiny 1 fans who love the game starting to be excited towards it now, because Bungie has released this new information on what the Forsaken expansion is going to include. And oh my god, it's going to have among the obvious things of like you know, new exotic gear and a legendary bow, like they said. It's also going to feature like brand new in-game regions to explore, 2 places, I guess, called Tangled Shore and Dreaming City. That's kind of a big point for me, because I remember the end game for Destiny 2 when I beat the game was basically just like everybody who was raiding they were all hanging out in like the same area. Just this one small part of the map was like the only real in-game area. So now we're gonna have like an entirely new open area, like probably multiple cities to just kind of be at. So that's it opens up the game a bit. It doesn't make it feel as constricting. Each of the major classes, so there are 3 major classes in the game, they're each going to get 3 powerful new subclasses and supers to go along with it. They expanded on the PvP. There's a new mode called Gambit. It's going to be a 4v4 hybrid that combines PvP and PvE concepts. It's going to have a free trial for all players next Saturday, or I want to say 1st of September. Yeah,
that actually does sound interesting. I mean, so this is the thing. I got bit by Destiny 2 when it first came out.
I had to talk you into buying that.
You talked me into buying that game, and I fucking resent you for it. Because man, did I get bit by that.
Yeah. Well, and what it is like kind of like what I was saying. I mean, you know, a lot of people felt that way. Like, you definitely were not the only one. I stopped playing it like a month into it. It's just like, yeah, everybody felt like it was heavily underdeveloped, and for all intents and purposes, it was.
I'm gonna say this though. My one. I mean, maybe the lack of content is obviously a problem, but to their credit, there's something about just the shooting mechanics of Destiny that feels right. I think Bungie
that's because
has it down.
You're a Halo fanboy, though.
Well, I enjoyed Halo, but the shooting feels fucking nice, and it's not like a recoil-based shooter like Rainbow Six or CS:GO or PUBG. It's obviously more of like an arcade shooter, but there's a flow and a feel to it, and just nailing those headshots and just it feels fucking good. You know, something about shooting several enemies in the head and they die feels great. Love it.
I did have quite a bit of fun with the PvP before I gave up the game. I will say though that I am pretty excited about this, because I'm going to get the Forsaken expansion. And just off the details that I've seen, it seems like the game is kind of making a comeback for the better. And I'm going to get back into it and, you know, see if it kind of makes me want to stick around. But it will have been the first time that I've even played the game since, I want to say...
Yo, are you on PC or what?
No, PS4. But that is a good no, because it did release on PC not too long ago.
I've been trying to talk him into building a PC.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna be going on to PC, but
yeah. I think I got like the special edition, so I have like the season pass or whatnot. So it's like I pretty much already have that. Although it's like I've been ignoring Destiny, so I'm like way under leveled.
Yeah.
For the new expansion.
No, but I mean they're just
like you and I have some catching up to do.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, just the way they treated the community with the last expansion left a really bad taste in my mouth.
Okay, take the wait and see approach.
That's kind of where I'm going with this, honestly.
The reviews are kind of already out for some of the people who have already been playing it on PC, and it seems to be a much more well-formed update than.
Well, I mean, it was especially the business tactics that they pulled with the with the DLC last time, like the locking previously available content behind a paywall once they released the last DLC. Like that was a dirty tactic. That was a dirty trick.
Right.
And that was the one that I can deal with mediocre gameplay.
They fixed it though.
They fixed it, but I mean,
they shouldn't have done that in the first
place. That's the thing. Is I mean, it's the same attitude I take towards, like EA pulling that. I mean, oh, here I go shitting on EA again. But EA, pulling their, yep, it's that time of night, huh? Pulling their shit with Battlefront 2. Like, oh yeah, sorry, we put loot boxes in the game. We didn't know you guys are gonna be mad about that. Okay, we'll take them out. No, everything's not all forgiven. That was a dirty tactic. You knew what you were doing. You just thought you just thought we were dumb enough that we wouldn't call you out on your shit. And I mean, that's how I feel about what Destiny did with locking the raids, the special raids. Behind a paywall when they released that first DLC. Yeah. So I mean,
the Leviathan raid was the first one. Well, it was the game that initially launched with Destiny 2, and that wasn't behind a paywall. But it's the update after that, the one that we were talking about. Reed, kind of like the mini update. Did they release another raid with that?
Yeah,
because again, I've been out of the game for a while, so I guess
I can't even remember what.
I've only played it once, and it was a long time ago. But yeah, they have another raid. They came out with Trials of Osiris, so I'm assuming there's got to be another raid with the Forsaken. So.
Yeah, well, and Bungie, I mean, they weren't scoring brownie points with their community when they did that, but they also locked the forums behind a paywall, which is also just kind of like, what?
Dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which didn't really make much sense to me when they did it, because I was like, dude, people are just gonna go to like the subreddit anyways. You know what I mean? To like talk about it. If you try to lock the forums, like people are gonna talk. Like they're just gonna use it different. They're just not gonna go to your site where you're.
The only way that makes sense is if like people are only gonna talk bad about it, and you don't want people to talk bad about it until, you know what I mean? It's like. It's like, they're having a secret party in there, and you get inside, and it's like everybody's like, this party sucks.
I just see it as like, they're just kind of like taking traffic away from their site, which is decreasing, revenue just in general if they have ads on it. And I'm like, they're kind of shooting themselves in their own foot. Like nobody really cares to be on the Bungie forum talking about, the information of the game if they can go to like the subreddit that's equally as active. Who knows? So it's like. Yeah. I don't know. That seemed like I don't know what they were trying to accomplish here, but yeah, I mean, Bungie getting themselves into hot water like that. Obviously, it's a huge issue.
I feel like their gameplay design is generally good, but their business sense seems to be not great.
Yeah, I feel like we could draw so many parallels between like this right now that we're talking about and EA.
Yeah,
and just like the way that they go about.
Except Bungie makes actually okay games.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. So I'll sit back. I'll wait and see. And if this game is great, if this DLC like completely turns the game around, like gonna serve me, a grilled cheese sandwich and suck my dick, I might reinstall it. But I don't know. The game's I do on my shit list. So
yeah, I'll try to download the update, give it a play by next week, and then see if I can give you guys a quick micro update.
It would be appreciated.
Thank you.
Initial impressions.
Any early information from any one of us would definitely be like valued, because I wouldn't be getting it until it launches on the 4th. Whereas, did you say that PC players already have access to it?
I think they do, right? No, maybe that was just.
It might just be certain players. I don't know a whole lot about it.
Yeah.
Well, even the beta, I feel like that'd be good, because it'll be releasing next week. So you got to imagine that there's still a beta ongoing. Like it's going to be more or less the final product. There's not too much time. So
what I just hope is that the campaign isn't garbage, or if that it is garbage, you can immediately skip it and go to the raid anyway. Because I hate it when they do that with updates for games, where it's like, hey, you have to do all these stupid quests that are literally the same quests with like different, you know, levels and like skins or whatnot, and you have to do all of them before you can do the raid, you know. And it's like just extra, it's just like, you know, puff. I feel like the new WoW update is a lot like, I mean, that's what a lot of people have told me. I'm not a WoW player.
See, it's funny
a lot of
because
people like,
I heard the opposite.
tell me that like, well, I've heard that the new quests are like good, but a lot of people who just like, I want to get to the content, like they want to get to like the dungeons, because they don't like quests. Like when someone says like, go and get me this, they're like, they immediately shut off.
Well, and to the fairness like of MMOs in general, they've typically never been super story laden. It's almost always been like, yeah, do this kind of filler shit to get you to the end game where the real content is, you know, which for me has always been a matter of like, I kind of like took that at face value for a few MMOs that I've been into, which it just kind of like, okay, like float through the game, don't really care about this, but then like, you know, heavily judge the indie game content for its worth, because if it doesn't at least have that going for it, amazing indie game content, then the entire game is a dud, because obviously the story would be, you know, as lackluster as it was.
It's kind of like what Destiny 1 was like, you know, just like no story. Like the gameplay was fun and all, but
yeah, and I gotta say, I wasn't really too big of a fan of like Destiny 2's campaign, you know, the initial campaign. Yeah.
I liked it. Callus was, you know, G. Like that Callus, yeah, I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool. Plus, Bungie cinematics are hype as shit, so.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they definitely have a good budget when it comes to that.
I'll give you that.
I do feel like there could be some potential here, just off of what I've seen and like kind of the community, you know, discussion about it. I mean, everybody seems to be pretty excited for it. And these are people who, you know, for the most part, I mean, I remember the general consensus from the community, like a month or two into the game's release. I mean, everybody was so upset with the direction of the game. Like, I mean, it was just short of like straight boycotting. Like, I think most people probably moved on to other things. There weren't many players that stuck around because Leviathan.
That's when I quit.
Yeah, Leviathan.
I never even finished
as a raid. Like nobody wanted to hang around the only in-game spot that there was. They didn't give it. I mean, the PvP was like a shell of what the first games was. They just took like 80% of what made Destiny 1 good, and then just ripped that out of Destiny 2. You know, so like, understandably, you know, people kind of justifiably left the game. You know, and they didn't want to come back. But now you have those same people kind of like, hold on, like, wait, you know, we may be seeing something here with the implementations that they promised to bring into this. It's almost like they're trying to get the game back to the way that it was. So on that note, you know, yeah, I'll definitely stick around and at least see what's there, you know. But it seems like we're getting more of the meat to the game back.
Agreed.
Yeah, which I don't know. I think that's something that should have been there originally. I mean, the fact that there were so many people that were saying, you know, by the time Destiny 2 or Destiny 1 was done, like it was this fully fledged game that everybody was really excited about, and now Destiny 2 is, I mean, like you said, kind of a shell of what it used to be. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm not really a big fan of applauding developers for getting caught up with where they were previously.
Right.
Well, isn't that what Ubisoft kind of did though? It's like going back and fixing.
Not necessarily.
Something that was wrong with it.
Because they just released bad games off of on the nose of it. These weren't like, I mean, they were following a legacy. But these games were, you know, they were standalone games. They weren't follow-ups to a specific game. They were their own standalone games that they came back and they fixed. As opposed to basically, I mean, what Bungie did was they took a game that was doing well and they just stripped content out of it.
I will say though, to be fair to that point, kind of like piggybacking off of what I was saying before, that's the very tricky thing to judge with MMOs, because if you compare like patch 5.2 when, like, let's say Destiny 1 ended to the launch of Destiny 2, no matter in what case you look at across the board on any MMO, where like you're not just doing the next expansion where you're adding all that content to the base game that already has so much content and all the right fixes in place, the right balancing of like, you know, of everything math wise in the game that everybody loves, and you're starting over with a new game, you know, it will be a shell of what it was. Like if you take the last couple months of Destiny 1 and that whole package and compare it to the beginning of Destiny 2, it is a shell. And just because that's just how MMOs are. I mean, it has to build up. You know, it's a build up. They'll start from nothing. They'll start from just a base level of content, and then, you know, next major patch, next major patch, next major patch, expansion, next major patch, you know, and it'll just keep going on like that. So Destiny 1 got to the point that it did over, I don't know how many years were they giving updates to it for, and how many expansions were there? Because I feel like that's like a good metric to kind of judge.
It was like over, I think, like a year and a half after launch. And I want to say there were like 4 major expansions.
4 major expansions. Yeah. I guess I don't really have the numbers off the bat, but 4 major expansions. I do know that there's an MMO that I actually play, not so much anymore, but it's gone through 3 major expansions already. And maybe that's been since 2013. Yeah. And the game has evolved tremendously since it first started. Like if you were to compare the game when it initially launched to where it's at now, 3 expansions later, it's so night and day you wouldn't even recognize it. It's the same game. You really wouldn't. So MMOs unfortunately have that aspect to them where it's like, if you're not careful, you will end up like kind of trying to compare the base game to the expansions, although how they have to work. Does that make sense? Like it's kind of like, but on that note, and so that's why, you know, I kind of took it with a grain of salt that a lot of the player base was really upset at first about the game not having a lot of content, because I'm like, well, you know, I don't know what you expected with a base game. Like, it's not going to have that yet.
You took the player salt with a grain of salt?
Yeah, exactly. But you know, on the bigger note, I will say I left it because partially I do feel like Bungie could have done a better job with implementing in like a good starting place with the base game to lead into the first expansion, or the first at least major update, which was the one that we were talking about before. I still don't know the name of it. I felt like they could have set the game up better than they did for it in the game.
Playing devil's advocate a little bit, I also feel it's hard to like unless you're a type of game that has a recurring player base due to like multiplayer, like MOBAs or battle royale shooters. It's like, if you're like a story-based RPG, like if you're an MMORPG, it's like, man, it's getting harder and harder to retain those players, because there's so much that wants to like draw their attention, you know, whether it be like other games or, you know, other media, or even forbid like a life, you know. It's like, it's
right. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the big thing that takes people out of MMOs, is just the willingness and the want to have a life again.
Yes, the classic battle between World of Warcraft and actually living your life.
Yeah, exactly. Which is the reason why, like, yeah, and not to get too far off topic with WoW, but it's like, you know, when that kind of when vanilla WoW kind of went away and it started going downhill from there, it was like a lot of people, I felt like they didn't really know what to do, you know. I was never into it, but I did kind of, I knew a couple people who, yeah, I knew a couple people who were like heavily into WoW, and it's just kind of like when that went away, it's like, they were almost kind of like refugees, like seeking asylum in like another genre. You know, it's like,
Yeah, definitely.
No, it's not good. And yeah, no, WoW addiction's definitely a real thing. I can attest to that. But yeah, no,
It
it's
sounds like a crappy CD with like different music. It's like, wow, that's what I call addiction.
yeah.
Oh man. So yeah, no. As far as Destiny 2 goes, I don't know. I guess my opinion is like they really screwed me over, and they really screwed a lot of people over on that last DLC release.
Well, let me ask you this:
Wait,
what was the
what's that?
content that they blocked out? It's like it's already forgettable. I don't know if it's that big of a deal.
I don't think that matters, honestly.
I mean, I understand the principle is messed up.
It's the principle, and it's the fact that, I mean, video game companies already don't feel like they shouldn't be held accountable for their content, and they feel like they can do whatever they want to the community, and the community will just buy their games regardless.
They came back and they fixed it.
They came back and they fixed it, but again,
I just feel like this is a case of like double standard, because it's like you look at Ubisoft and they released a freaking broken ass game when For Honor came out, but they came back and they fixed it. You know, obviously this is like also
Sure.
It's like DLC or whatnot, and they're like, you know, it's a little bit apples and oranges, but
I will say,
And I'm
maybe
open
it's-
to it.
yeah.
I'm open to it. I'm not saying no, absolutely not. I might eat my words, and I'm fully willing to admit that when it happens. But
yeah,
based off of past history, I mean, Ubisoft has. I mean, we're not talking about just one game that they turned around and they fixed and said, okay, yeah, sorry, we screwed up. Like, we're talking about
they fixed a lot of
a complete 180
The
in their
Division.
attitude.
Oh yeah, no, they've done amazing stuff.
Yeah, in their entire category catalog of games, and their attitude towards how they treat the community.
yeah, I'm glad that they're starting to turn around their decision on Assassin's Creed, because Jesus Christ, it's been years
Yeah.
since they fucked up that whole franchise, and it's like just now they're starting to like get around to understanding that annualizing a franchise is not a good idea. It's like you know, I want to say I've been out of Assassin's Creed games since Brotherhood.
Man,
I haven't even played one since Brotherhood, because it's left a bad taste in my mouth ever since Brotherhood, because it's like, and a lot of it having to do with court case. I don't know if you guys remember, that surrounded one of the, I think he was the lead developer for the Assassin's Creed games up to that time. I think he was definitely the lead for Assassin's Creed 2 and maybe Brotherhood, and Ubisoft just kind of like, you know, fucked him right out of his job, and like just kind of you know, took the glory for the success of the franchise after that point. Because I remember when Assassin's Creed 1 came out, it was not that popular. Like, Assassin's Creed 2 was the first Assassin's Creed to really put the franchise on the map, and then Brotherhood like solidified it, and then it became what it was. Like, it had the upwards trajectory that it had after that point. But Assassin's Creed 1 was not really like, you know, a huge hit. You know, I think people kind of rediscovered it later on.
No, absolutely.
Because there was just a lot. I remember, like, if you play the first one, you play the second one, you realize just how much more there is to do with the second one, and that was just its direct sequel. It's like they just added so much to the game that actually made it interesting. But I mean, you know, I know I'm somewhere kind of in between both of you. Like, you know, on one end, like, yeah, I do believe that, you know, there should be second chances, you know, for companies that misstep, make bad mistakes. You know, I don't even want to call them mistakes because they're done intentionally. But, you know, when decisions like that are made, it's like, yeah, like if they could turn around, they could fix it. Awesome. There's a second chance. They can, you know, they can redeem themselves. And then on another hand, I tend to think it's like, you know, man, it's really unfortunate that they even brought themselves to make that decision in the first place, because that shows how little regard that they have for, you know, their fan base at large, if they could even bring themselves to do that to begin with, you know. So it's like there is kind of like a mix of how I feel. I know Bungie is not at all the perfect studio to, you know, to look at in terms of like, you know, ethics and the way that they deal with their community and, you know, their player base and their games. But I feel like we could draw a lot of the same parallels between like EA and Ubisoft, or what have you. Second chances are good, and if they're not taken, if you're somebody like EA who just like, they don't care about second chances, they just want to like continue their shitty pattern of just doing everything that they want to do to like get one over on their player base at the expense of the players, then it's like, that's where I tend to draw the line in the sand. A couple missteps won't necessarily get me to lose entire faith in the company.
Well, I think what it kind of boils down to is like, yes, it's good to fix a mistake, but it's like, by holding them accountable for the mistakes that they made in the past, it's like, I mean, obviously we want them to sort of rectify their mistakes. It's not so much about the stuff that's already happened. It's about going towards the future. It's like, we don't want them in the future to make the same mistake they made in the past. And if we don't hold them to task for those mistakes, then they're likely to do it again in the future. And I understand that kind of from Jeremy's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we should absolutely applaud them when they accept those mistakes and go back and rectify them. But we shouldn't let us forget about the mistakes that they have made in the past.
No, I agree.
No, that's a really good point, though. It's talking about like kind of how it's already broken the trust of people who like feel like they don't want to give a second chance. Because like, how many examples of us honestly like putting their feet to the fire have we seen with like a lot of people in the gaming community, to a lot of companies who do these kind of missteps? It's like, we don't see that near as often, and maybe that's the reason why we're really hesitant to trust again, is because like there just hasn't been much accountability in
it's
general.
Mostly because they're just complaining forums. So we never actually take people to task or hold people's feet to the fire. We just we bitch about it on Reddit or in gaming podcasts or wherever it might be.
Yeah, sorry about that, Jeremy.
No, you're fine. I don't know. And that's the thing. Like I was saying, I'm open. I'm absolutely open to them turning around. And if it does happen, I'm willing to accept it. I'm simply saying I am skeptical as to the nature of this supposed turnaround right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think it's in good faith. Is kind of the main thing I'm getting at, and I might be wrong. I am fully willing to admit that I might be wrong. I mean I've been wrong several times. I'm very I'm very well acquainted with the concept of being wrong.
No.
But I mean, on that point, I think it'll be a welcome surprise for all of us if
yes,
Bungie can actually turn around Destiny 2. I'm not banking in on it. I just like that this is like a thing. I like that they're giving an attempt to really kind of show that they're willing to do more than what everybody initially expected of them to do with this game for the long term. This seems like a pretty hard-hitting expansion, just in the sheer amount of content that I've seen that they're going to be releasing on launch day. They are going to have a new raid, and there's also, and one thing that they've done in the past with their raids is they've only given like 2 days before the raid launched, from when they launched the expansion, before they implemented it. Usually they wait on the raid because they're trying to give people the time to gear up to go into the raid, because that's obviously the highest level content that you can get into, and it's going to have the highest level gear as a reward. So they try to make sure that they give people ample time to get ready in terms of gear level, to be able to fight the raid bosses, to have a good standing chance, against the whole raid as a whole. So before, historically, they've only given 2 to 3 days for players to gear up before, starting the raid and throwing them into it. And it's like, if people are not geared up in time and they're, then I guess they're just not going to have a group, right off the bat, which is going to make it harder for people to find people to run with, because it has to be somebody who's ready to go roughly when you are, which could be weeks down the line. This time around, they're giving them the better part of 2 weeks before they implement the next raid, which is a huge quality of life fix if you've ever kind of raided in MMOs. But it just,
at least for us filthy casuals.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh no. Exactly. The people who are definitely more hardcore are already ready to go. They're going to be going in with the bare minimum gear anyways, and they're going to be able to like rock that shit right away. You know, like that's just kind of what higher caliber players are going to be able to do. Yeah, they're going to be doing it in bare minimum gear, like it's nothing. But no, it's just it'll be a welcome surprise if they do make good on their promise with their fans, and kind of turn around the initial perception of the game. I'm looking forward to it anyway. We'll see what comes out of it. I have no problem. On the other hand, because I have no problem with completely shitting on Bungie for fucking this up. If this is if that's what's going to happen,
Totally.
I guess I'm just kind of keeping my eyes open.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
I think
that's more or less it for that, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you guys came up with something else, I think we're gonna go ahead and call it a night then.
Yeah. I look forward to next week. I can't wait to tell you guys all about TI. It was so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, go ahead and send me out that those videos, and we'll get those up on YouTube. Speaking of which, let's get some plugs in here. Thank you guys for watching again tonight. We are here every 11:30 Central Time at Twitch TV/ubaraluk. That is UB
9:30 PST.
Yep. UBARALOOK. We also have a YouTube channel. Unfortunately, we don't have our own URL, so instead of getting that big long string of letters and numbers, you can search for us on YouTube at Not Important Gaming Podcast. You can find a few of our videos up. Unfortunately, last week's or 2 weeks ago isn't up yet. I had a very busy week and wasn't able to get that uploaded, but that will be up soon. And I try to keep that updated as frequently as I can. Basically, as soon as our videos go down from Twitch, I try to get that up. So you can watch our old videos there. And I think those are even a little better because I put a little love into them, a little bit of editing.
Mm-hmm.
But enough tooting my own horn. Yep, you can find us here on Twitch. You can find us on YouTube. And I think that's all the shilling I've got.
Yay,
So,
shilling.
So unless you guys have got something else to say, I think we'll go ahead and call it a night. Thank you guys very much for watching the Not Important Gaming Podcast with Jeremy, Reed, and Derek. I am Jeremy.
I am Derek.
Hey, I'm Reed.
And wish you a good night. Thank you all for watching.
Love you.
Bye.